they are very positive in that way, because they say, okay, we can interact with borrowers directly. We don't use any middleman. We don't send money to anyone, to them, then send money to the borrower. So we interact indirectly with the borrowers. They're very much interested in Bitcoin lending. And actually, some of them did already, they did some test use cases on Debifi. And these use cases were very successful for them. And they were surprised. And I would say some of the more traditional lenders that we're going to onboard in next month, they actually been surprised, and they actually made a specific unit within the company that was going to allocate liquidity specifically for Debifi.
Welcome back to another episode of Bitfinex Talks. I'm your host, Ricardo Martinez. Today, my guest is Max Keidun, who is formerly known for Hoddle, which is a peer-to-peer Bitcoin exchange, but he's come on the show today to talk about his newest venture, which is Debifi. Max, thanks for coming on the show. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm actually formerly known but I still advise Hoddle and still, help them out. So,
Nice.
But Debifi takes 100% of my attention now. So happy to talk about it.
Cool. So I guess for those who don't know what Debifi is, give us the rundown. Explain what Debifi is trying to accomplish.
It's a kind of new kid, in town, or a new type of beast. So it actually goes back to Hoddle, because in Hoddle we've launched 3 years ago. We've launched the lending platform, which is lend at Hoddle, which is peer-to-peer lending. Basically, you can borrow. Anyone can borrow. Anyone can lend stablecoins, particularly USDT, mostly USDT, to be honest, against Bitcoin held in multisig as a collateral. And we've been approached shortly after we launched the lend at Hoddle. We've been approached by one of the banks in Southeast Asia, and they asked whether they can use that type of service for their customers, because they did like the approach that they can directly communicate with the borrower, and that the collateral, which is Bitcoin, is always locked in the multisig, which means it's non-custodial, with keys distributed across multiple independent parties. But we kind of did our research. We understood quickly that Hoddle is inappropriate or not appropriate tool for institutional lenders, and we decided we need to build a different venture, and that's how the idea of Debifi came in. So Debifi basically is a non-custodial Bitcoin lending platform where institutional lenders meet Bitcoin holders, whether these are companies or private individuals across the globe, and they provide liquidity using Bitcoin as a collateral. So it's kind of institutional peer-to-peer. On one side, we have lenders, only institutions. So it's usually licensed companies from TradeFi or crypto space, or companies that are specifically structured to provide loans. In some regions, you don't need to have a license. You can just be a proper different structure, and you can provide loans. Or, for example, you can provide business loans without having any even specialized structure or license, because these are business loans. And on the other side, we have a lot of Bitcoiners, whether it's a private individual who wants to buy a house or wants to buy more Bitcoin, which is a pretty much frequent use case these days. Or we have companies like big mining companies or Bitcoin businesses who has a lot of Bitcoin on a balance sheet. They don't want to sell it because they do understand that the value of Bitcoin is going up, and they want to borrow against that. So we match one with another. It's a free market, so anyone can participate in that on the institutional side, and anyone from the borrowers can go in and borrow against their Bitcoin stack. So that's shortly about Debifi.
When people are borrowing, are they receiving stable coins from these institutions that are lending them?
No, not only. Actually, 2 weeks ago, we launched fiat as well. We started USD and Euro. So the idea of Debifi is that you will be able to borrow stable coins. Currently, we support Tether, and we also support USDC. and they will be also able to borrow fiat. We just recently added, as I mentioned, USD and Euro, and next week or during, I think that the podcast will be already released, and there will be already fiat loans available on Debifi. So we're onboarding some liquidity providers in USD and Euro, and we're actually going to add in August, which is basically this month, we're going to add GBP, we're going to add several other currencies. So there's more and more lenders coming in. The good thing about Debifi is that, again, as I mentioned, it's an open market, and we want to build a solution where institutional lenders actually compete for Bitcoiners, for Bitcoin borrowers. You know, they see other rates and they lower them, or they provide different terms, and they trying to compete to outbid each other in order to get more customers. So that's a completely freely regulated market in the sense of price discovery, you know?
Yeah, and the competition, I'm sure, gets better rates for the people that are
as
borrowing.
more competition, as more lenders will be onboarding, the better rates there will be. And obviously, the bigger institutions are, usually their cost of capital is very much low, and they will be able to provide very interesting and very competitive rates. But also another feature for institutions is that you don't need to build as an institution infrastructure in order to start providing Bitcoin loans, and you don't need to seek for borrowers. We already build an infrastructure. You can be onboarded. Basically, Debifi is plug and play. You can be onboarded to Debifi in 1 working week, and you can start offloading your liquidity using Bitcoin as a collateral, like in 1 working week. And you don't need to build complicated multi-signature storage system. You don't need to build margin call system. You don't need to build that. We already did that. And we onboard lenders for free. So basically, they don't own us anything. They don't pay us anything. We charge on the origination of the loan from borrowers. And that's a perfect match, because, again, we allow you to do what you want to do as a lender, which basically doing the cash flow and earning the interest. We don't charge you on that, and we just provide it with all the infrastructure, which we're good at, and that's a win-win.
With other Bitcoin lending platforms that I've come across, a lot of times the loans are like over collateralized, correct?
Yeah.
Does Debifi like function in a similar fashion?
Yes. So for fiat, by default, we set 50% LTV rate, meaning that if you want to borrow 1 million, you need to put 2 million worth of collateral in the escrow. With stablecoins, a bit different. It's more flexible. It's from 30% to 70%, up to lender to decide. Why for stablecoin it's a bit higher? Because it's way more easier to transact in stablecoins, meaning that if the price of collateral is falling down and you want to do the early repayment, you have faster settlement time. Basically, you just send Tether via Liquid or via Ethereum or Tron, and you just upload transaction ID, and our engine automatically rebalances your LTV, so you can avoid liquidation easier with stable coins. And in fact, like, we believe that stable coins are like superior form of the fiat currency. And but yeah, of course, like, most of liquidity are still in fiat. You know, people need to, people want to buy real estate, people want to buy cars, they want to travel, they don't want to spend their Bitcoin, they want to, cover their bills with the loans. And of course, for that, you need to have fiat in many regions yet.
Yeah, I would say like anywhere outside of Argentina, stablecoins are not going to be easy to buy property with.
it's actually getting better and better, with stable coins. There's more and more regions in the world which start to accept stable coins, like Switzerland, for example, in Lugano, where we are incorporated. It's pretty much you can do a lot with stable coins. You can even pay your taxes with stable coins. So it's getting there, and there's a lot of new use cases appearing for stable coins. But of course, fiat still rules the world. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know. I don't have any certain opinion for that. My only thing is that what I like about stable coins, if we're comparing it with fiat, that we can settle, right now in seconds between just two of us without any middleman, basically. And that's a very powerful tool, to be honest.
Yeah, it certainly is. You mentioned that you're supporting USDC and Tether. Tether's on a bunch of different blockchains. Which like variations of Tether are you supporting?
We are supporting Ethereum and Tron,
Ethereum and
obviously,
Tron.
because
Okay.
it's like but we're also big fans of Liquid, so we're supporting Liquid as well, because we're Bitcoiners and we like Liquid. We had an experience working with USDT on Liquid at Hoddle, and it's just amazing. First of all, it's highly confidential because of the blinded transactions. And
Mhm.
another thing which is amazing, that when the Ethereum transaction price were high, a lot of people actually, or a lot of borrowers, they actually moved to Liquid because of the cheap transaction cost and because of the fast settlement. So I believe that stablecoins on Liquid have a huge and bright future, and we're big proponents of that. Of course, still, like, let's be rational and realistic. Of course, there's still way more volume on Ethereum and Tron, but I think Liquid has an opportunity to become a very important part of Tether ecosystem.
Yeah, I think so too, especially considering that like Tron used to be very, very cheap, similar to
Yeah,
Liquid. And as it's getting more and more demand for Tether transactions, the transaction fees are rising. So it's not the cheapest anymore. I
yeah.
think like a lot of people have also like switched to like Ton and Polygon, like Matic for Tether as well, because it's actually a lot cheaper than Tron is now.
Yeah, we're not yet supporting that, because again, we pick our currencies that we support as a loan asset. We pick out of the activity, or in case of Liquid, because we like the technology out there. So we'll see if it's going to be Ton or Polygon. It's going to be big. Then of course, obviously, we're going to introduce that as well. For now, it's just Ethereum, Tron, and Liquid.
And then do you guys have plans to add any decentralized stable coins like DAI?
We had that in Hoddle.
Mhm.
I'm not sure whether Hoddle has that yet, but we don't have any plans for now.
Okay.
But we'll see. I'm not a big believer in this algorithmical stable coins, because, like, well, I see how USDC works, how USDT works. And since we're like providing the institutional type of service, I think institutions are more interested by something that is like hard backed by a fiat, which is USDT and USDC.
Okay.
It's pretty hard. We need to also think from the perspective of how we explain our service and how we provide our service to our lenders. And like, a lot of them, they don't understand DAI. They do understand Tether and they do understand USDC, but they don't understand DAI. Again, nothing bad about DAI. It's an amazing project, and I'm sure there's a lot of very nice things about it. But for now, we're just supporting USDC. We're actually more into expanding the fiat offering rather than stablecoin offering at this point.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, you mentioned that Debifi kind of grew out of a different use case that you didn't feel was appropriate for Hoddle's lending.
Yeah.
Is Hoddle still like doing peer-to-peer lending, and then
Yeah,
Debifi is like
Hoddle
focusing
is
more on institutional?
Yeah, Hoddle is a peer-to-peer, retail peer-to-peer, and it's also allows for anonymity. So, which means that you basically post the collateral, you receive stable coins, and that's it. You don't need to go through KYC, KYB, whatever procedures are there. Debifi, actually, lenders on Debifi, they can request and they can ask borrowers to pass through KYC, KYB. So it's a different kind of beast. And also, Hoddle always was and will be for emerging markets mostly. Like you mentioned, Argentina. Our usage in Latin America is pretty much high, because also Hoddle is micro lending. So you can borrow
Mhm.
only up to 25,000 stable coins on Hoddle. On Debifi, the minimum is 25,000. So it's more like for, It's also for emerging markets, obviously, and we also see a lot of demand and a lot of interest from institutional liquidity providers from LATAM, particularly from like Brazil and Argentina. We are in talks with several of big institutions out there, because again, they want to tap into this market, to the Bitcoin lending space, but they don't want to build the infrastructure by themselves. And we basically offer them this plug and play solution, which is Debifi. But yeah, there's like a lot of differences between micro lending and like the regular lending that we provide with Debifi. So we don't compete. Basically, these two projects don't compete. They actually complement each other. And again, Hoddle is available in emerging markets for everyone. Debifi is more on the institutional side, requires KYC, requires different checks, which is just, how institutions perform these days,
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest differences, I would say, why we couldn't accommodate the institutions to Hoddle, because they have certain list of rules which they need to comply in order to, have their license and have their business up and running.
Which regions are you guys seeing the most interest from? You just mentioned Latin America has a fair amount of interest. I imagine like Southeast Asia probably has a lot of interest as well.
Well, I would say I always was bullish about Latin America, again, because I really believe that's there's like huge potential in Bitcoin and USDT there, because again, people understand that you basically don't need to sell the idea of stable coins and Bitcoin in Latin America. People already understand that. They already see the use cases for that. So I would say Latin America, Southeast Asia, but we're actually very active now in more traditional markets such as European Union, Europe. We are also in talks with large liquidity providers from US, obviously, because US is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, Bitcoin market in the world. UK, Australia, so more like traditional market, Japan as well. So basically, there are no limits for Debifi. Could be accessible globally as long as we have liquidity provider in a certain market, in certain currency. We're there. Basically, it takes us like 2 weeks to be in a certain market. Middle East as well. The ecosystem there is growing. A lot of investment, a lot of companies actually relocating to Middle East. So it's Bitcoin is everywhere basically, and it's growing everywhere. So I would say Debifi is a unique solution because it can serve emerging markets and more traditional markets. So I would say, yeah, all of these markets are out of our interest, and we just started, but we're already see that we're pretty much quickly expanding in different regions. So probably like 3-4 months, we're gonna be providing liquidity. We're gonna be providing infrastructure for liquidity providers in multiple regions in the world.
And like, since you guys are doing something kind of groundbreaking, which is like a hybrid of digital assets and traditional finance, like how are regulators looking at you guys? Like, are they putting like a strict framework around like your business model, or do they kind of understand what you guys are doing?
We are technical solution providers, so we only hold one key to the escrow. We don't provide loans by ourselves. We don't engage in any cash flow activities, so we just provide a
technology platform.
We just provide technology platform. So obviously that gives us a lot of competitive advantage towards being just a regular lender with their own platform, custodial platform. So in that sense, we're doing our legal research, and most markets that we did legal research, actually all of them, we were exempt from any type of regulation, because again, we just provide technology. We don't want to engage in lending activities. We want to provide infrastructure for lending activities. That our core competency, and that's our competitive advantage.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's like a peer-to-peer, like Hoddle is like peer-to-peer. Like you're not actually trading; you're just providing the place where traders can meet and transact with each other.
Yeah, that's true.
So, how are the institutions looking at Debifi? Like, it's a peer-to-peer exchange for institutions. Like, are they familiar with like this peer-to-peer commerce?
Yeah, well, it's more like it's a peer-to-peer lending platform, but they are very positive in that way because they say, okay, we can interact with borrowers directly. We don't use any middleman. We don't send money to anyone to them, then send money to the borrower. So we interact indirectly with the borrowers. They're very much interested in Bitcoin lending, and actually, some of them did already they did some test use cases on Debifi, and these use cases were very successful for them, and they were surprised. And I would say some of the more traditional lenders that we're going to onboard in next month, they actually been surprised, and they actually made a specific unit within the company that was going to allocate liquidity specifically for Debifi, because they become suddenly very bullish. They have this amazing underlying collateral, which is Bitcoin, which is highly liquid, highly accessible, programmable, secure, and in huge demand, obviously, now with all the institutions coming in. And it's a win-win for them because it's always over collateralized, and even if the borrower fails to repay for whatever reason, they will get repayment from the collateral, which is Bitcoin. So they are amazed by the technology. They're very, very excited. So we see that it's only been positive feedback. Nobody, like I would say 2 years ago, a lot of companies were very skeptical. Now, like I would say 95%, 96% of the companies are highly positive toward that, and they're exploring the ways how to operate in that market.
As a borrower, like if I have a bunch of Bitcoin and I want to get some stable coins or some fiat, like what kind of interest am I looking to pay back, like for that loan?
Again, depends on the currency, depends on the market. As more, you already mentioned, as more lenders who will onboard, the bigger there will be competition. The rates obviously will go down. The average that we see now is between 15 to 17% APR per year, which is actually not that far from other lenders like custodial and centralized lenders. Basically, the average on the market now is starting from 14%, and we go up depending on the size, the terms, etc., etc. So I would say it's around 15-16%, and we expect that these rates might go lower as we onboard more and more lenders from TradeFi, because these guys are usually having the cheaper cost of capital. They can borrow cheaper than others, and basically reloan this to others. But again, we believe that we're somewhere in the beginning of bull market, and during the bull market, rates are usually crazy high, because we experienced that with our previous project, and we saw some like 25% APR from lenders, and people were taking these loans because the cost of opportunity of selling your Bitcoin now is very high, especially if you're at the beginning of bull market. You can pay 20% APR, but then if you will think that Bitcoin can double in value very quickly, you basically are winning just with not selling your Bitcoin. And also, one of the reasons why people don't want to sell Bitcoin is not only about the price, but it's also about taxable event. If you are borrowing against your Bitcoin in many countries, it's non-taxable event, meaning that you will not pay any taxes from that. But if you are selling your digital assets, in our case is Bitcoin, you will be forced to pay a tax, capital gain tax. And so yeah, it's a win-win. The borrowing against your Bitcoin is a perfect tool for live off your Bitcoin. Every Bitcoiner dreams not to sell and just live off the Bitcoin, and borrowing gets you that utility.
I guess another question I have, and don't take this the wrong way, but we've seen other Bitcoin lending companies go bust. There was like Voyager, Celsius, BlockFi.
Yeah.
What's going to stop that from happening to Debifi?
Yeah, very simple. We're non-custodial. We don't rehypothecate. It's technically impossible for us to rehypothecate user funds. So Debify is only for borrowing. It's not for yield generation. And when you create a contract on Debify, we create a unique multi-signature account on a public Bitcoin blockchain, which gives you full transparency. You can basically watch that address in real time. You can verify that it was created just recently because you have signed that creation. And keys are distributed between four parties, which is lender, borrower, Debify, and there's also authorized key holder, an independent entity that holds a backup key to that escrow. And you can only move funds from that escrow, Bitcoin from that escrow, by having at least three keys. So meaning the consensus is working with 3 out of 4, which means that even if Debify get, like, for whatever reason we're shutting down, you still have three keys, you as a lender, let's say, and you as a borrower, and then there's also backup key holder. And in fact, you can actually access the collateral pretty much easily without Debify. Debify is just a front end software that allows you to do it a bit more easily. But we are going to release a piece of software which will allow you to access your collateral even without Debify being an interface for that. So multisig is very powerful technology out there, especially for Bitcoiners, and it actually allows you to take certain risk and not be dependent on the platform that you're using for their services. So this is what is going to allow. What happened with BlockFi, Celsius, Voyager, that they basically offered this crazy yield product and gambled with the customer money.
funds.
Yeah, customer funds, and eventually everyone were bankrupt. So that's what the problem is with custodial services. When you send your coins to the custody of someone, these are not your coins anymore because you don't hold keys. Whatever they will say to you, whatever they will sell to you, whatever they will show you that they have certificates and whatever audits and multiple, there are still use cases. We saw that with BlockFi, with FTX, which was huge, big company, and nobody thought that's going to happen. Eventually this what happened. So you need to be aware of the risks, and you need to understand that as long as you don't have at least one key to that escrow, these are not your Bitcoins. These are someone else Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's the golden rule of Bitcoin, correct?
Yeah, it's true.
So we're running out of time here. So I want to ask you really quick, is there anything about Debify that I haven't asked you that is important for the audience to know about?
I don't think so. Like, I pretty much explained everything. We are very big proponents of non-custodial setups. We believe that that's the future for a lending business. Using multisig as a storage system for your collateral. And we're just growing. We just started, and if you're interested, just go to debify.com, check it out. Feel free to send us messages, ask questions. We're happy to help you out, and spread the word. Because we truly believe that non-custodial lending can outcompete custodial lending and can be even bigger, and we believe that's the right way to do that.
And then my last question is, Hoddle and you, and now Debify, are well known for Baltic Honeybadger, the Bitcoin conference, and that's coming up in the next month or
3
2
weeks. 3 weeks.
3 weeks. Okay, perfect. Do you want to tell people about Baltic Honeybadger?
Well, it's like the most OG Bitcoin conference in the world. We started actually in 2017. So I would say we are one of the oldest, if not the oldest, running Bitcoin conference in the world. It's not a big conference, up to 1,000 people, but we have amazing high quality speakers and very low noise and very high signal. And this year we're going to have Jack Dorsey, Jack Mallers, Adam Back, a lot of big names talking from the stage, discussing Bitcoin and Bitcoin only. So, I would like to invite everyone to join us 24th, 25th August in Riga. It's going to be an amazing event. And it's going to be actually a whole week of events, and just come. You won't regret it.
Thank you. I've heard that Baltic Honeybadger is one of the best conferences from a lot of my Bitcoin friends that are in Europe. They always speak very, very highly of it. So I'm sure it's going to be a blast this year.
We invite everyone. We have people flying from Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Argentina, Brazil, to Honeybadger, US, Canada. So there's no excuse not to come. Riga is very nice. End of the summer, still going to be warm. Very nice, high quality crowd, and you will definitely enjoy that. So it's my invitation to all of you, and to you, Ricardo, to come to Riga to enjoy Honeybadger.
Indeed. Well, Max, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come on the show and tell us about Debifi. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.